everyone, I'm Lisa.
And I'm Nick.
And you're listening to It Takes Two, the podcast where two people take two movies with the same plot or premise and watch and discuss them.
And celebrating Pride Month once more, we are starting off dark and strong, like my coffee, with Japanese animated film from '97, Perfect Blue, and the very clear, when you watch the back-to-back rip-off, that is 2010's Black Swan.
Yeah. So these are, I don't know how much queer content we're going to get out of these, but they're two movies about perfectionism and obsession and voyeurism and the pressure that performers are under, especially young performers, and dissociative identity disorder and hallucinations, and just there's definitely sexuality stuff in there, but it's mixed in with the whole melting pot of a lot of confusion. So the main question I came away from both of these films with was, what is real? What is reality in either of these?
Because I feel, for those who haven't seen either of these movies, Perfect Blue is not a movie you can go into being like even the blurb alone, you were like, I didn't want to read the blurb.
Yeah, I read I read half the blurb before we started watching it. I was like, I don't want to read the whole blurb because I'm already upset by this.
Yeah, it's not a movie you can sit down and just be like, oh, I'm just going to watch this movie. It is definitely within, if you're a person who has never experienced animated film out of Japan, it really does do what Western Hollywood films do, but in an animated sense. There is no boundaries. It's very interesting. I won't go fully into it, but basically, Japan didn't have the same censorship laws that America did, and because of that, the media is about to evolve to the point where, you can't put. In the West, we're like, you can't put adult themes in cartoons. Cartoons are for children and children alone. And it's like, no, like, it's in there. I saw a list a while back. I think it popped up on Reddit, and it was talking about, like, the most influential films for Western audiences that came out of Japan. And Perfect Blue's up there. Obviously, the classics of one of my favourites was Ghost in the Shell.
Yep.
There's Ninja Scroll, Spriggan. There's a lot of actiony ones in there.
Would have thought Akira.
Yeah, Akira's in there. Because it's just showing from a Westerner. If you haven't seen, well, it's very rare now because of the internet. But if you'd never seen any of those movies, or not been for our generation at least, where you couldn't just find a movie online and then be able to watch it somehow. Not saying piracy is a good thing, but back in my day, you had to go to the friggin' video VCR rental place.
Yeah.
And if they didn't have a movie,
you did never see the movie.
You've never seen it.
If it didn't show up on TV at 9 p.m. one Wednesday, it's interesting the points you're making there about Japanese cinema and about how putting adult themes into animated films and stuff.
Yeah.
In relation to these films for two reasons, because one, Perfect Blue was originally supposed to be a live action film.
Yeah.
It was conceptualized as a live action film, and they only switched to animation when some of their backers backed out of the project and didn't want to fund it anymore. But also, because Black Swan got a lot of backlash and complaints about having adult scenes in it, when it was, because it was, I think, the British Board of Film Classification classed it as a 15, so it meant that you had to be 15 years or older to go see it.
I'd hope so.
Yeah, but it was the film that they got the most complaints about because there is a homosexual sex scene in it.
Yeah.
And
the best of all time.
The film classification office had to come out and say, we rate this the same way that we would rate
a sex scene between straight people.
Yeah, it's they're wearing clothes the whole time. You don't actually see any you don't see genitals. You don't see any sexual or anything that's that people would complain about and put it into like an 18s thing. If that was a man and a woman, there would be no complaints.
Yeah.
So they used the same classifications that they would use. They said they don't discriminate, based on the genders of the people involved, and it fit the classification of 15. So they released it as a 15 movie, but they got the most complaints they've ever gotten about a movie, and every single one of them mentioned that scene.
I can just picture a bunch of Puritan people now taking their kids to the movies and being like, "Oh, you young Jimmy and Jane, you're old enough to go to what would 15 in New Zealand be, like M?" Like mature audiences.
Is that 15? I thought that was 18 and over, is it not?
No, 18 and over is like you have to be 18.
Oh, okay.
Mature is just like you're not going to freak out in the movie theater and scream and run and hide.
Yeah, I don't know. See, I grew up in Ireland. We also just had ages on them.
Because PG is like parental guidance is advised.
Yeah, so I think the British ones are the same as the Irish ones. So there's U, which is universal, so anyone can watch this film.
Yeah, so that would be G.
Right, and then there's PG, which is parental guidance is advised for people under the age of 12 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's PG-13, which is, people 13 and over can watch this, but we recommend parental guidance for anyone who's under 13. But it's like a little bit higher than regular PG, because it's like, hey, there's like specific things here.
We can thank Spielberg for PG-13.
Right, and then we had just age classification. There was 15, and there was 16, and then there was 18. There's no 7. I never saw a film that was 17.
What's the difference between 15 and 16?
I don't know, but there definitely was, because I used to lie about my age to get into the cinema.
Shock.
And I remember being 14 trying to get into 15 films, and also being 14 trying to get into 16 films, and took a little bit more lying. My parents, I don't think my parents are going to be shocked to hear this. They knew what films I was going to see. It wasn't like I was trying to get into racy films. I just was a little bit into horror more than other 14-year-olds might have been. Yeah. So it was like, I lied about my age to get into The Cave, which is not a good movie, I did, when I was 17, lie about being 18 to go see Pathology, but again, I was doing it because I was interested in the horror aspects of it, and then it turns out there is weird sexual stuff in that, and I didn't like that at all. But that's not what I went to see it for.
It's quite funny that we've started with this particular sequence in Black Swan, because years ago, when this movie came out, and I was working with someone, and we'd discussed the movie, and she had mentioned her and her partner had seen it.
Right.
And he was a very lovely, like genuinely, I met him a couple of times. He was a very lovely, but very conservative Samoan boy who goes to church.
Right.
And kisses his mum goodbye every day. And he had that moment of, oh yes, the floor is made of floor, and the roof is made of roof, when that scene, and he's just like, can't look directly at the scene. Like, I find some of the imagery in Black Swan, obviously, like, we're not talking about Perfect Blue for there's a huge difference. But in Black Swan, like, the sequences with the body horror that happen, and, like, I'm the kind of person who watched someone get, like, ripped apart by aliens or disintegrated or burned and be like, haha, look at that dick.
Yeah.
But as soon as like someone's peeling nails or skin around like cuticle skin or just anything related to feet pain, I find that physically disturbing.
Yeah, I think you can feel it. You know what I mean? Because, like, when she starts picking it, like, I've picked at, about my nails up, but then she just pulls it and just keeps going, and you're like, no, just stop. Just stop doing it. Like, it's horrifying. It's genuinely horrifying. And it's just that it's very much like an escalation from something normal into, like, just pushing it slightly too far.
It's the cinematography in those sequences is very visceral as well. It's not, you can't look away.
Yeah.
But yeah, the toe stuff, like just her taking her shoe off and her sock. Well, it's her ballerina. I don't know what ballerina shoes called something differently. Do you know?
They're wearing point shoes.
Yeah,
aren't they the ones with the blocks and the?
Yeah. So yeah, she peels her little
shoes.
slipper off in her sock, and then the toenails facing at a 45-degree angle, and you're like, no, please. Yeah, the flip side to that in Perfect Blue is you get full up simulated sexual assault sequences for a TV show that the main character is acting in.
It's Perfect Blue is so interesting. So I was saying this to you, like, as I don't know, I think it was after we finished watching it, that I really would love to see a cinematherapy episode on it because I'd like to know.
I think that would end up on YouTube. They would have to have a Patreon only because
probably because I think they do tend to stick to more PG stuff, but it's just on the basis of it does seem to be like dissociative identity disorder, except it feels like everyone in the movie has it. So, but it's this weird. There's a weird mirroring thing. It's funny I say mirroring because in Black Swan there's mirrors in literally every shot of the film, like or almost every shot, every scene, definitely almost every shot. But the mirroring in Perfect Blue is that she's, she was a pop idol and now she wants to be a serious actress, so she's starting out in a one episode of a detective show where she gets one line, and then it's like trying to build from that to get a recurring part in the series. But like, what's happening in the show is what's happening to her in real life, except that it's more clear cut in the show that she's filming, because from what I understand of dissociative identity disorder is that like it is triggered by a traumatic event.
Yeah.
And then you develop this second personality who lives through trauma for you, remembers your trauma so that you don't have to. And she's clearly going through that in her life, as is Nina in Black Swan. They're both going through this like split in their, this kind of shattering of their personalities where they are experiencing lapses in time and all this stuff that's going on. But I don't really know what the triggering event is for either of them, whereas in the like show where Mima is playing a character, the character is raped.
Yeah.
And then the character experiences the same thing that she's experiencing in her real life, where she's getting these, episodes where she's someone else and, is violent and is whatever, and, but is protecting herself from that trauma.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really interesting that in both films, the actual character experiencing it, we don't really get to see a definitive traumatic event.
It's interesting you point that out, because what I think Perfect Blue does better, because it is animated and you couldn't do it. Like they tried really hard in Black Swan, but it kind of misses the mark. As an audience member, you have, while watching Perfect Blue, you have no friggin' clue what is real and what is not.
Yeah. And
there are sequences that happen in an order where you think they're real, and then everything's perfectly fine. And even the character's like, wait, shouldn't I be all covered in blood or all?
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm confused. Who's the real killer? What's happening? Is it copycat killers? Like, who's the obsessed? Like, it's such a bizarre way to portray something to an audience through storytelling. But Black Swan does it really well.
Yeah.
Where Nina keeps seeing herself in other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the play between Natalie Portman and Mila Kunis, where you get this, like, Natalie is, in essence, as the person, the White Swan.
Yeah.
And Mila Kunis is literally her sexier, more aggressive, more lustful sister.
Mm-hmm.
And the combination of her reflecting that attitude at a person who's not, like, she's like half confused half the friggin' time of what's happening.
Yeah.
Including the sex scene, which, like, you don't know isn't real until she wakes up the next morning and is just like, oh wait, didn't you stay at my house? And she's like, what? what? Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about, sister?
And even in that moment, they leave it ambiguous enough that you're like, is she just messing with her?
Yeah.
And in Perfect Blue, I think one of the tamer examples, but like that really messed with my mind for the whole thing, is the website. There's a website that's got like pictures of her and her diary, and it's like giving like very specific details of what she's doing throughout her day.
Yeah.
And you think it's the stalker, but then as it becomes clear that she's like losing time and she's having these weird dreams and you're not sure if she's doing these violent things. So if you're like, wait a second, is she running the website?
Yeah.
Is this a split version of her that's actually doing this and she doesn't remember it? And then you get, the guy that you think is running the website is getting emails from the website. And you're just like, hang on, what is happening? Like, who's running this? Because is it just her? And I think, by the end of it, that it's not her in that instance, but like, it just as easily could be.
Yeah.
That she's having these dissociative episodes where she's totally a different person. I'm sad that I'd never seen Perfect Blue before.
That's good.
Because I wish I had used it in my thesis. You're looking at me strangely because I think you know what my thesis was about.
Yeah,
because my thesis was about facial hair.
Yeah.
But one of the chapters was about the use of facial hair in film in particular, but other visual media, as a visual representative of the state of mind.
Yeah.
And part of what I had to do to really like hone in on that was to say, well, what do filmmakers do for people who are not male or do not have the ability to grow facial hair? And what I found was that in most cases, and I studied a few different films for this, and it was the outside world was affected by the woman's state of mind.
Yeah.
So as like, I think I studied like Truly Madly Deeply, Melancholia, things like that. So I think Melancholia, it's nuts because it's just a nuts film and like there's an apocalypse because she's depressed. Whereas in other films it's like even just like rom-coms and just regular film where there's a woman and she's going through mental health issues, more often than not what they'll do is they'll have her apartment or her house or her room become more and more disorganized.
Yeah.
And Perfect Blue was like a perfect example of that. Like as her mind got more split, she'd like wake up and her room would be just everything would be everywhere, and then and her fish died and her just.
Did her fish really die though?
I don't know. The fish were dead and then they were alive and then they were dead and then there were different fish in a different apartment.
Yeah.
But it was very much that like these things would happen and then she'd wake up not sure what's real and what's not, and her apartment would be a mess.
Yeah.
Whereas at the beginning of it, when she's like feeling happy and good, it's immaculate.
Yeah. But it's also your sort of, for that point of view, when you're talking about like how mess can affect mood.
Mm-hmm.
When you're happy, you also sort of Lily Allen sings about this in one of the albums that made her quite famous. Like looking twice at things, because the first time you just see something and you're like la 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 la, that's normal, and then you're like, oh, that's not actually normal, but because I'm in such a good mood, that imagery is not going to ruin my day.
True.
So therefore I'm going to see it differently to what reality actually is.
Yeah.
And you find that quite a lot. People who suffer from mental health will basically just like let the mess that is inside their head flow out of them.
Yeah.
And I notice it myself when I am feeling down. Instead of taking a plate from where I'm done eating to the kitchen or to the dishwasher or whatever, I'll just be like, it's on the floor, I can't be bothered anymore, and it'll be gone.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally, it doesn't exist anymore.
It's very much an energy thing though as well, because I mean that's why people use facial hair for men, because it's just very easy to do.
Yeah.
But it's this idea that when you're in a bad mental state, you're not looking after yourself, you're not doing the extra things, you don't have the energy to tidy up, you don't have the energy to groom yourself, you don't have the energy to shave, And that's why it's very easy on men to be like, oh, he's depressed, so he grew a beard.
Yeah.
You know, in film. I mean, it does happen in real life,
Yeah.
but, you know, whereas with women, because they don't have such a, you know, obvious physical thing about themselves that you can change that easily. Like, often, you know, you might make their clothes more disheveled or whatever, but more often than not, it'll be what's around them will change.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, I just find that very interesting that Perfect Blue did that so well. I think in Black Swan, the way they did it was they just increased the mirrors. Which sounds weird, but like in the you know, towards the beginning of it, when she looks in a mirror, it's just her looking in a mirror. Whereas then you get like when she's more fragmented, you get like the mirrors that are where there's, you know, she's got a mirror in her house that's like a central mirror with a whole lot of splintered mirrors around it.
Yeah.
So you see like a whole lot of broken reflections, and then there's a bit where she's talking to her mother, and there's like a 3-segment mirror, and there's a bit where she's looking in a mirror, and there's other mirrors behind her, so it's just an echo chamber of mirrors.
Yeah. It's interesting because the cinematography in Black Swan is done really well because it makes you feel very claustrophobic. Like, the scenes are very tight and intimate. There are very few large, wide shots that aren't stage related.
Yeah.
And it's always from Nina's perspective as well. Like, even the dance, because when they go to after they take drugs and go to the club, there's, in most of those, like, sexually, I can't think of the word, I was going to say leavening, but that's not like a rising word. Don't worry. When the tension is growing between with Nina and I can't remember what was it.
Lily.
Lily, yeah. In standard dance sequences, you get like from the other movies and other things, like if you remember the Matrix cave rave scene. Even no, you haven't seen it.
I'm just not remembering it.
Okay. The Blood Rave and Blade one.
I haven't seen Blade. You know that one.
Okay, so the sequences, the music plays, but the film is slowed down, so everything is more flowy, and the fact that people are jumping, and it's like, it's slow. The lighting's low, but like, it's like there's always up lighting. And so the outside of the frame is dark, and you're sort of pushed down on the characters. Like, I honestly think I like a lot of the Disney Marvel movies.
Okay.
But Blade, the first Blade in that first opening sequence, I will play Pepsi Challenge against any sequence from any of the Marvel movies. It's just that well done.
Pepsi Challenge.
There was an old thing from the 90s where you drink a can of, you get 2 Dixie cups, and one of them's got Pepsi and one of them's got leading other brand, and you can pick the Pepsi out.
Oh, okay.
It's a Pepsi Challenge. Anyway.
Weird.
No? Okay. That's American culture flowing into New Zealand via TV in the late 90s, early 90s.
Okay.
Where was I going? Yeah, so those... something in my eye. Sorry. In the sequence with the dance sequence. In the sequence of the dance sequence.
Yes.
I'm all over my words today.
It's okay. Just continue.
The lighting is very, very, very harsh. It is either full red or full green, which in my mind was like, Christmas. But it's very confusing if you don't know which person's which, because they sort of mold it. It's like almost like a metamorphosis sort of sequence where they're molding into one, which ends up then being kissy and, you know, later. But that's like, it's sort of that escalation moment. And it's interesting because it just shows a lot about the mindset of the cinematographer and how they're trying to portray everything very viscerally. And I think that does the movie a lot of justice and makes it better than it would have been as it is like basically a cut and paste copy of
Well,
Perfect Blue with
listen,
some details
hate to
changed.
break it to you, but Darren Aronofsky is doing a Luc Besson original idea, do not copy, because he insists that there was no inspiration drawn from Perfect Blue.
Right.
And what's really funny about that is that, like, half the IMDb trivia for Black Swan is like, this scene is a direct reshoot of... It's like, this shot is exactly reconstructed shot from Perfect Blue. And Darren Aronofsky says that he drew no inspiration.
Yeah.
And this sequence is... And you're just like, okay.
It's the same as Hunger Games and Battle Royale, though.
Mm.
Like, people can have the same idea, and then people can accuse him of plagiarism and just be like, well...
Yeah, no, but there's shots in it, like the bathtub stuff.
Yeah.
It's literally just lifted from Perfect Blue. You know, there's shots that are just taken, just like yoinked straight out of Perfect Blue. So it's weird that he says that there's absolutely no inspiration from it.
Do you think women in bathtubs is a trope?
Do I think women in bathtubs is a trope?
Yeah.
What do you mean? I think it's something that Darren Aronofsky... Oh my god, I'm saying his name too quickly. Darren Aronofsky does a lot, because there's a bathtub scene in Requiem for a Dream, there's a bathtub scene in The Fountain, there's a bathtub scene in this. I think he loves putting women in bathtubs.
Okay.
I don't know if it's his Tarantino feet thing, which is what I assume you're thinking there.
It's just interesting, because, like, literally when you said about the sequence in the bathtub, I didn't think of Perfect Blue, I didn't think of Black Swan, I thought of Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. But it's funny, because in the trivia for Perfect Blue, it says this scene was an inspiration for a scene in Requiem for a Dream.
Yeah. Fair enough. It just yeah, I don't know. To me, it feels like a trope. It's like, men shower, women take baths.
But I think it's I feel like it's literally a trademark of Darren Aronofsky to have, like, a woman having a mental health crisis in a bathtub.
Yeah.
Though the one in The Fountain, I believe she's having a mental health crisis. I think it's the more central scene in the bathtub in The Fountain. Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely scenes and shots from, like, even just her on the train looking at her reflection.
Oh yeah, that's 100% a rip-off. Like, you can't...
It's the same shot,
yeah,
you know?
and then she sees herself, but it's not herself, it's Mila Kunis's character, like...
Yeah, and they do a lot of the Mila Kunis, in the dark looking like Natalie Portman and stuff, and it's, I don't know.
The face changes are really creepy.
Yeah.
And they did it really well, because in Perfect Blue, you're seeing... obviously spoilers, but, like, you find out at the... Are we too early to start?
No, go for it. We can talk about the... Because, I mean, it is... I think it ties into... Especially if we want to talk about... Like, try and talk about queerness in these films. Yeah. It ties into that.
So, the murders that are taking place in real life, in Perfect Blue, are being committed by her, like, manager, her talent agent. And the reason being that the talent agent is committing these murders to these people, even though she's fine with, like, the sexual assault sequence, like, what's happening in her. She's trying to progress as a actress, as a model, getting away from the pop idol, the J-pop star thing. And it is her talent agent who is literally running the website, completely obsessed with this person that isn't real, and committing these crimes because of these people who she visions to herself are hurting the image, which is the thing she wants to be. It is obsessed with.
Yeah.
So and it's really disturbing.
So she is a former pop idol herself. Yeah. And she's aged out of it, much like Winona Ryder's character Beth in Black Swan.
And
she's aged out of it, she's been replaced. And she seems to be fine with having been replaced, but she lives vicariously through Mima, and her pop idol career
Yeah.
and status. And then when Mima decides she wants to move away from that and give up being a pop idol and go into, acting, whatever, she has some kind of a split where she believes that she is Mima, is the real Mima, and that the actual real Mima is an imposter who's trying to destroy her image. So she's like, no, I want to keep being an idol, and, don't look at this stuff like that's an imposter who's, pretending to be, raped on TV and is doing these nude photo shoots and whatever. And she kills the screenwriter who wrote the rape scene. She kills the photographer who took the nude photos. And it's like, oh, okay. And then she writes to this guy who we think, like, up until this point, we think he is
the killer.
This guy who is a stalker fan. She believing she's Mima writes to this guy and is like, I'm the real Mima, you need to kill the imposter.
Yeah.
So he then goes to try and kill the actual Mima.
Yeah.
But it's very much that she's like, she is obsessed with Mima. So it's interesting because in Black Swan it's kind of the other way around, that Nina wants to be Beth.
Yeah.
And she wants to replace Beth and become her, and she, even the part where she goes into her dressing room and steals her stuff because, she wants to be like her and puts on her makeup and things. She wants to become what she was. She wants to become the star that she was. And in Perfect Blue, it's funny because she doesn't want to. The problem is that she doesn't want to follow in what's her name? I've forgotten her name now. The talent agent or the former idol.
The former idol.
Because I want to say Rima. It's close to being Mima. It begins with an R, I think. But anyway, she's doesn't want to follow in her footsteps. She wants to do her own thing, and that's where the split comes in.
It's Rami.
Yeah. Right. That was close enough. Yeah. So then it's the other way around, that Rami is obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And wants to then become her. And take over her life and live as her, which is very interesting.
Yeah, you definitely see, and it's interesting because I think I was chewing at your ear when we were watching the movie. It's very interesting, even in the 90s where this is coming on film, of just how bizarre. I think the West is a little bit more, we want the scandal, we feed on the scandal. I know you don't like South Park, but South Park did a really good episode on it about how basically people get sacrificed, which is really dark and twisted, but it's a very interesting episode. But the point I'm making is, like, in the West, like, we've seen documentaries about how basically the public ate Britney Spears alive, and it was, we know that it was her father who was a big huge giant piece of shit, controlling her life and her money and everything she can do, because they were basically forcing her to have a mental breakdown with her schedule and everything else, and the amount of pressure they're putting on her,
which I think is what Perfect Blue is about to some extent.
So the interesting, the bit that I was chewing your ear about, which I'll just reiterate for our audience, is K-pop, the Korean pop massive tidal wave that has hit the West. Psy is, I think, one of the biggest contributors to that. The culture they live in that society is very different to what we perceive in the West. In the West, you think people get a hit, they get a record deal, they end up on every channel, every radio station all the time, they get lots of money, they live in a big mansion, they're well off, everybody's happy, and then they have some scandals where they break up with some Hollywood person that they were dating and blah blah blah, or unfortunately, like it's happened to some female performers where they've had miscarriages, and it's been front page news, and it's like that's the darkest point, and like these people have no, like, they're horrible people, but it sells magazines, which is literally their entire job.
Spoiler, I think that's going to come up briefly in the next episode as well. Yeah. They've got something I want to talk about.
The going on to what it's like in the K-pop world, which is these people are controlled by the producer, because it's not run as in like, oh, here's a girl we found in Little Rock or somewhere, in Denver, and it's like, let's see if she can sell some records, or let's see if this band can, get somewhere. This is like very industrialized. It is, let's get these people, let's get them in the clothing. They all live in a compound together, so they all can't leave. So there's no scrutiny from the paparazzi. Paparazzi? Mm-hmm. I don't know the word, how it's actually pronounced. The
paparazzi.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the Lady Gaga version of that. Like, they're basically not allowed to date, because it's that whole image of like the audience has to imagine themselves with them, and it's a very, very controlled, very produced. Everything is like overly done over the top. And I remember a scandal that came out because one lead singer from one all-girl group was dating another guy from another all-boy group, and everyone was like, oh my god, they're actually human beings. It's like, no shit, motherfucker. Like, this is why in the West we have people like shaving their heads and drinking, and you look at literally any celebrity female who's been left to her own devices. They just end up being surrounded by yes men and enablers and people that help you make terrible decisions.
It's weird because I don't know enough about the situation. I didn't bother to research it because I don't want to talk about it at length. But watching Perfect Blue, for some reason, the first person I thought about was Miley Cyrus.
Yeah.
Where it's like this like clean Disney pop image of this is what you must be, and then like, well, I want to be seen as an adult, so let me just verge into this totally different image, which is what she's kind of doing.
I think Miley had some trouble in the middle, but I think now that she's taken control of it, like she released an entire nude photo shoot she did. And she's just like, yeah, if you want to fantasize about it, literally, here it is.
Here it is.
There you go. Like, it's all out in the open. There's no taboo anymore. Like,
and weirdly, this does tie back into Black Swan, not in terms of the story, but in terms of the actual filmmaking, which is that Natalie Portman has obviously, nude or mostly nude scenes in that film, and she has not had any since then.
Yeah.
And that's because, so she had no problem doing that. She was quite confident and happy, like Mima is in Perfect Blue, in the, when she's doing the rape scene, she's like, oh yeah, no, it's okay, let's just go ahead, we'll just pause while we're, cutting, and oh yeah, let's do the scene again. She's a professional actress. She's no problem with it, and she thinks, the human body is beautiful and beautiful in film and can be used in an artful way. But because she's nude in that film, even though you don't see much of anything, people put it on porn sites.
Yeah.
And then she was like, well, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So I will just never do a nude scene again in a film.
Yeah, because the one that always comes up all the time is she was in Your Highness, which I don't think have you seen that movie?
No.
No, it's super weird. Fair enough. She got a butt double for that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just weird, literally because she wasn't opposed to it at all before the film, and that it literally was just that it ended up on porn sites, and she just, she said that then I think like half of every review about the film was about her body or about and she just was like, I feel like I shouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm not a prude. I'm not ashamed of it, but it took away from what should have been, a great film. Which is why she's just decided not to do it in future. But it's interesting that, like, even because that's what part of what that film is about is the pressure to be perfect and the pressure to always, like, obviously she's suffering from bulimia in that film.
Yeah.
The character, not the actress. A lot of, self-image issues and
obsessive compulsive with the scratching on her back, which is like
yep.
super messy at the end of it, and it's so fantastically done. Her metamorphosis that is like psychosomatic is just so well done.
Yeah.
It is gorgeous in the most terrifying and upsetting way possible.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of comparison to each other, and I mean that happens in that world, I think, in the dancing world, but also in performance in general. So it's interesting that even like in a film where they're making some kind of a commentary on that life, it happened to that film. People, and also, I might as well mention this now, that the director tried to make it happen as well, because Darren Aronofsky tried to pit Mila Kunis and Natalie Portman again. This is like my favorite fact about this film. So he tried to pit them against each other, and he was like, he kept them separated during filming. He was sending them both messages about each other, about trying to be intimidating and being like, oh, Mila's doing really good, you need to step up or whatever. And but they're just really good friends. They'd be like, oh my god, I heard you did really good on set today. Well done. They were just like celebrating each other, which is how it should be. People need to stop pitting people against each other. Especially, it seems to be really prevalent in like female performers. People want to just pit women against each other all the time. I still get it, like, if I'm scrolling through, like, Instagram Reels or whatever, every now and then it'll be, like, comparing two randoms, so that would be, like, Zendaya and Taylor Swift or something ridiculous, and it's just, like, why am I comparing this? As, like, even, like, a who wore it better thing. It's, like, why do we, like, they both look great. Like, why are you even doing this? Why is this still, like, it's 2023. Why are we still obsessed with just pitting women against each other all the time? Just, like, love each other,
Celebrating Pride Month.
All women should love each other.
Yeah.
No, but you know what I mean. There's definitely, it's weird. It's just weird that that's still going on. And, like, everywhere.
I think it's one of those weird situations. It could be related to our biology. It could only be a Western thing. I don't know, but it is a long running point you just made.
It must not be just a Western thing though, because Perfect Blue is making a commentary on this.
Yeah.
And that's, a Japanese film from the 90s.
Yeah, but Japan's also different because it's not about just comparing women with women. There's a lot of pressure in their society, and it doesn't matter which form of media. If you watch a piece of art that is related to any person who's like at school and has siblings, it's like that emotional damage guy. He makes jokes about it all the time. Like, it's just like, oh, your nephew back in China could walk and talk and do, high level calculus before he was 2. Like, you're a failure. And it's literally that. There's so much pressure.
I think that's what Turning Red is a little bit like as well.
And it's that's and again everywhere
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Thank you. Has that because it's about generational, like, people went to the States from Asia and then focused really, really, really hard to be successful, and then their kids grew up in a world of excess because they were so successful, and they think they're less than they were because they're not literally killing themselves to be perfect.
Another great queer film to shout out for Pride Month, though. Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
Because both Evelyn and Joy are queer.
Yeah,
Because Evelyn in Separate Realities is in a relationship with I can't think of the character's name. Jamie Lee Curtis's name. What's her character's name? Diane?
I can't remember.
Something like that. But yeah, that's a film that very much touches on
hot dog fingers.
Yeah.
I think the hot dog fingers touches on you.
No, but it's very much about, Evelyn judging Joy and wanting her to be better and better at this and better at that, whatever. But at the same time, then you see that that's how she feels it's because she doesn't feel good enough for her own father.
Yeah.
That she's projecting that onto her daughter.
Yeah.
And it, you know, that film comes to a wonderful roundness at the end of it. But yeah, definitely watch that film if you're looking for a film to watch for Prime.
Yeah, if you didn't get enough of the fact that it like swept the Oscars.
Great film, great.
It's like because I haven't seen The Whale. I missed that in the theaters, and I'll see that when it comes to some form of streaming service, probably, hopefully soon. His other work, which was The Wrestler, which is one of my favorite films of
Black
all time.
Swan was supposed to be Black Swan and The Wrestler was supposed to be one film, and then he thought that it was too much to tackle in one film, so he separated them into two films. It was supposed to be about a wrestler and a ballet dancer who were in love.
Okay, I like the stripper, I guess. I think that's a nice like gritty realism.
Yeah. Also, he apparently this script was in the works for 10 years, and apparently he approached Natalie Portman about it in like 2000 or 2001. 2001 when she was 20. He approached Natalie Portman to be like, "Hey, I want you to be the lead in this film. I want to make about a ballerina."
Yeah. And
then it didn't get made for 9 years after that. And she put herself through ballet training for it because they didn't have funding yet not in 2001, like I think it was a year before production started. She paid for her own ballet lessons so that she could be in shape and able to do the ballet in time for the film because she believed they would get the investors, but at the time they didn't have the money, so she just paid for it herself.
Yeah.
And then she fell in love with and got married to the choreographer of the film, so
good for her.
As you do.
It's really intense. Like that form of dance is insane.
Yeah.
The pressure that you put on your... No wonder the Russians are like the best at it ballet, because like they don't give a shit. The way the Chinese are so good at the Olympics. What's the gym sport called?
Gymnastics?
Gymnastics. Yeah, I was like gymnastics in my head. Didn't sound right. Because they just like, you get taken away from your family, you get stuck in a camp and you do that every day, and people feed you and do that, and it's the same with ballet. It's like, no wonder so many ballerinas smoke, because like you have to have something.
Which is how Mila Kunis got through the film.
Yeah.
By the way, chain smoking.
Yeah.
But Natalie Portman had a history. She did ballet as a child.
Yeah, I think if you started off young, you could do it. But if like
well, Mila Kunis didn't have background in ballet. She trained for 6 months for the film.
Yeah.
And they had to make it look like, not only because of how she's described, or how, you know, the reason she's a threat to Nina in the film is because she does it like effortlessly.
Yeah.
So they had to not only make her be able to do believable ballet, but they had to make her do it like in a way that made it look effortless. So there's a lot of trickery around Mila Kunis's things, in that any scene where you only see her from the waist up, she's not doing the proper footwork.
Yeah.
You know, she's doing some kind of hybrid to make it look the way it's supposed to look. And I think with Mila Kunis and with some of Natalie Portman's shots where it's like just shots of the feet, it's a double. But it's funny because apparently there was like a whole scandal around the double who doubled for
not Natalie Portman's feet double.
Yeah. Have you heard about this? No, she like before the DVD came out, she like went public and said that almost every shot of Natalie Portman dancing in the movie was actually her with Natalie Portman's face superimposed over it, and they were giving her credit for it, whatever, and they're trying to claim that Natalie Portman did her own dancing when she didn't. And then they were like, that's not true. We had her there, and we've never said we didn't have a double, but we had a double for, you know, things that Natalie couldn't do, or whatever. And they literally, in response to her, they went through the film shot by shot. All of the dance sequences, it's like 130 something dance sequences, and like 112 of them or something were Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
So it was literally like between 80 and 85% of the scenes where she's dancing is fully Natalie Portman dancing. And most of the shots it's just zoomed in on her feet. Yeah. And it's like, okay. It's not that much of a scandal. Natalie Portman really put herself through shit to try and,
Somebody wanted
perfect
their
it.
15 minutes, eh?
Yeah.
They were just like, I'm actually Natalie Portman's
Apparently,
feet.
the editor was like, actually, editing the film together. Sometimes the dances were so perfect that he couldn't tell the difference between Natalie Portman and the double because she did it exactly the same. Yeah. so as much as possible, he used Natalie.
Yeah.
So she properly trained for that. Whereas Mila Kunis just chain smoked away. No, Mila Kunis does a great job.
Yeah.
And any shot where you can see from the waist up or see Mila Kunis's face, it's Mila Kunis doing the full dance. So it's only the only shots where it's not Mila Kunis are where you only see the feet.
Yeah.
But part of how she got into shape was chain smoking. And then she hated it so much that she just gave up nicotine immediately after doing the film.
Fair.
Which she says is one of the best decisions she ever made in her life.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough. But, like you were saying, definitely, even on that film, the ballet dancers were going to cigarettes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I went on a total tangent there.
It's fine. It's perfectly fine. That's what the whole podcast is for, folks, unfortunately. That's what you signed up for when you press play.
Yeah. Did you have anything you want to say in relation to, these films with LGBTQ stuff in mind, considering they're less queer than I thought they were going to be?
From a male perspective, I can say this. All the men in both these movies are creeps, abusers, and use the characters to get what they want. The scriptwriter who gets murdered, he's like just trying to, literally everyone's worshipping at his feet, and he's literally shitting them out, literally while they're filming. Like, it's not like the whole friggin' season arcs planned. It's not like True Detective. There's or Dark or something. He's literally shitting it out on film day, for the lines for people. Trying to get her into the show, and it's like, oh, how do we get her into the show? And it's like you get one television that's been like, don't make her do this. The other one like, no, it'll be great for her. She should be sexually assaulted in front of an audience. Yeah. It's great for her career. You get the other flip side of that. You get the completely obsessed security guard fan who is so obsessed with this ideal of her that he doesn't even know that it's not her. Yeah. The fact that he's so overly protective of her that he goes out and buys every copy of the magazine that had her nudes in it. Yeah. Well, I should have said photo shoot because they weren't all nude. But the explicit photos of her, like, goes out and just buys all
and also, I wouldn't say they're explicit, though, either.
No.
She is mostly nude in them, but they're not explicit photos. She's just posing.
Yeah. And it's and then at the same time you get the I can't remember his name now, the actual guy in charge of the ballet.
Oh, Tomo?
Yeah.
Leroy or Leroy?
Yeah, he's also using her all the time to get what he wants, and it's the violation of her throughout the entire movie is just played off as like, I'm trying to motivate you. It's like, what? Yeah. Like,
it's messed up. It's also
if there was a third person in the room, you'd be getting fired, sir. I don't care. Like,
it's heavily implied that that's how she was conceived. Also, that her mother slept with a director to get a part, and she was born as a result of that, because their mother's like, oh, it was a mistake or whatever, or I don't want you to make the same mistake I did, and she's like, hey, because she means, the implication is that she's the mistake. And obviously Beth has been sleeping with the guy as well. So it seems to be like a whole thing in the within the world that we're looking at.
There is not a singular positive male in either of these two movies. And I think that's one of the harsh realities of being a female in this sort of anywhere where anybody's scrutinizing what you do, when you don't have other people around you to be just like, did you see that? Would you be happy when I contact HR for them to talk to you as a witness?
There's also not any positive women in it.
It's true.
Because you look at it like the women that you're seeing in it, both, was it Rami in Perfect Blue and Lily in Black Swan. I forgot that's the name of the movie for a second there. They're both kind of people who like on the outside or like in front of other people seem to be like, talking them up and being like, you can do this, whatever, but then are going against them totally behind their backs.
But then in saying that though, how much is actually in
Black Swan? How much is actually happening? How much is in her head?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very hard to tell.
The juxtaposition scene, and I just have to talk about the choreography and the way that it's animated, and it's so beautiful. Where she fully, when Rami fully snaps and is chasing her.
Yeah.
And you get the sequences of like, and it's just so well done, and I don't know the best way to portray this verbally.
Mm-hmm.
She is literally dancing on the air.
Yeah, she's like ethereal. She's not real. Because it's an animated thing, they can have her like visually look how she imagines herself. So she's like perfect, and she's glowing, and she's in like the tutu and the outfit that she's wearing for the show, and she's just like gliding almost.
Yeah. And then you see the juxtaposition and the reflection, and it's like her who's older, overweight, and just like pouring with sweat, chasing her like a psychopath.
Yeah, just like sprinting down an alley holding a knife or whatever.
It was an umbrella.
Oh yeah, it was an umbrella, she was going to attack her with. And it's literally, again, done in reflections that like you're seeing like this like real happy like, oh, it's
just perfect, smiling, just like literally bouncing across the air effortlessly. And
and then it's just, it's just passing, and it's not even like a continuous reflection. It's like in windows, so there's like blocks between it. Her just like absolutely gasping for breath and sprinting with this weapon.
It's just so well done.
Really well done. Really, really well done. But
I love mirror work in movies. I think that's why Weapon of Choice, the music video, won an award.
Okay.
Because of just how good any mirror work where you think you should be able to see the camera and you can't. It's just absolutely just chef's kiss from the cinematography, in my opinion.
Also, what about mirror work where you think you're supposed to be able to see the actor and you can't? A la What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Ooh, Ghost Cop. Just some of the most expensive sequences in that film are just erasing reflections, because they erased them all from they had a really shiny table.
Yeah, they would have been a pain in the butt.
Yeah, that's the most expensive sequence in that film, was that they'd erased the reflections of the vampires from the table.
So is there any other trivia you want to cover that we haven't already covered?
Probably. Perfect Blue, I mentioned that it was originally conceived as a live action feature. One of the other things about it was that the original 35mm negative was destroyed by accident.
Oh.
So every copy that exists of it are sourced from low quality prints off that. So it's a good thing. I mean, it's lucky that we have it at all, to be honest. Yeah. But the original negative was just destroyed by accident. Yeah, I think we mentioned all the rest of the trivia I had for Perfect Blue. For Black Swan, I feel like I mentioned a lot of it. One of the things that I found interesting was that what Natalie Portman said was the most difficult challenge of the film was, aside from the training and the dancing, was changing her voice. Yeah,
because she is very childlike in that, and it is,
Do you want to know the interesting thing about that?
What's that?
That's her natural voice. She spent years, every film she was in. So if you listen to like Leon and her in the Star Wars movies, I feel like she sounds pretty like that.
Yeah.
Every director she worked for in the 2000s, aside from Darren Aronofsky, criticized how childlike her natural voice sounded. So she worked for years with vocal coaches to deepen her voice and to sound more adult. And then she had to undo all that work
Jesus.
for this film because Darren Aronofsky was like, no, I want you to sound like that. I want you to sound like you're childlike, like you repressed and you haven't actually become an adult yet. So I thought that was really interesting that she literally had been working for years to not sound like that.
Yeah.
And then she had to undo it all for one film. So she said it just really felt like, taking herself back to a point that she worked really hard to leave behind.
It's interesting that's something you mentioned, because I think a lot of shit, you rekindled something in my brain when you mentioned Star Wars.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because, the prequels were not held in a very good light by original trilogy fans, and now they're held up in the light because of the sequel trilogy being as bad as everyone says it is.
Yeah. But it's not even as bad as people say it is. It's fine. It's fine.
Just poorly written. The whole, like, I don't like sand, Hayden Christensen getting a lot of shit from his acting.
Yeah.
The sequences being weird. That's the director. Because the actor doesn't know what they look like or how they sounded. It's the director's choice to be like, oh no, that's the scene, guys.
Yeah.
I don't like sand. It's rough and it's coarse and it gets everywhere. Like, how about a second take? How about getting your assistant director to take over, George? Because you're a fucking hack and you always have been.
Is that you just want to go on a Star Wars rant, or were you going to say something about Natalie Portman?
No, just the point being is like, what you mentioned is like, okay, I need this from you. Yeah. You have to do it. And if she'd had her normal voice, she wouldn't have portrayed the innocent, naive girl. Because you're like, I don't know how, like, through the entire movie, you're like, I don't know how old they are. Like,
yeah, it surprised me because I thought Mila Kunis was way younger than Natalie Portman, but they're about the same age.
Yeah.
So they're nowadays. I think we're releasing this the same week that Natalie Portman turns 42, and Mila Kunis will be 40 this year.
Yeah.
So that film is 12 years ago. So they're both in their late 20s.
Yeah, but they look like they're.
They could be any age between from 17 up. You know. It's definitely interesting. You've no idea.
Yeah.
What age they're supposed to be, and they are two actresses who are short and youthful, and so they could be playing any age. It's definitely interesting that they chose to have them, or to have, I think in particular, Nina portrayed as very childlike.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that because I had no idea that she had deliberately worked with vocal coaches to have a deeper voice.
Yeah.
So the voice that we hear Natalie Portman in most films is a voice that she has worked to get.
If I worked with a vocal coach to get my voice any deeper, I don't think anybody would ever actually understand me.
I feel like it's tempting because I hate how high pitched my voice is, and
it's just when you're under stress, sweetie.
It's just in general. Like,
it's just in general.
Genuinely, if I listen to my own voice, to me I sound like a 12-year-old boy on helium all the time. Maybe I should just work with a vocal coach. That's what a lot of we're bringing it back to Pride Month. That's what a lot of trans people do. Because there's this misconception that, like, as you transition, your voice changes. It doesn't.
Yeah, because
spoiler alert, it doesn't.
Yeah, because you're not talking about, like,
hormone replacement therapy does not change your voice.
Physical vocal cords.
So when you hear people, if you hear trans people and they're going through vocal changes, more likely than not they're working with a vocal coach or doing their own vocal work based on YouTube videos or just apps you can get to deepen their voice or bring it to a higher register depending on what their preference is. So it's interesting to have to know that there's just like cis women out there who are doing that same thing, who are going, no, my voice is too high and childlike, I need to make it deeper in order to be taken seriously in my profession. Which is essentially what
Yeah,
she's had to do.
Changing your voice is very difficult to do. And to imagine to do that all the time seems very bizarre to me. Like, 'cause I know what I sound like. I've listened to enough of not that I listen to our podcast, I'm just saying, like, through editing other things that have had my voice on them, I know what it registers like, sound wave wise. I know we've had a funny complaint from one of our listeners who got really expensive ear vibration headphones and couldn't understand the hell I was talking about because
because they were not, because they go, but they're, what are they, I can't remember what they're called, but they're headphones that go like on your
brain,
on your head. They don't go in your ear, I don't think. They go outside and they just like the vibrations, they work the same way as like cochlear implants or whatever. Which is, it's just funny that apparently your voice is so deep that it does not work. Cannot hear what you're saying.
Just destroys it.
It's just like
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's how exactly how I sound. There was no difference between what you just did and what I did. Oh, the spoilers, there was a difference. Lisa was doing an impression. Thank you for all who joined us for this episode, and will be joining us throughout Pride Month for the next upcoming episode, because we like to celebrate everybody.
Yeah, I also want to do a quick shout out. So this is not a sponsored episode, but
no one's paying us.
But it was suggested by one of the co-owners of Photo Restore. So just to be aware, this episode's not sponsored, but the promo code from our previous episodes is still valid if you want to get some photos restored or colored.
Yeah.
And they're going to be bringing in a service where they scan them for you as well, which they don't. It's still not live yet, but maybe not too far in the future.
Is there more information about that on our Discord at some point?
Yeah, it's on our Discord. Or if you want to go back and listen to episodes, I think 39, 40, 41.
I'm glad you know, because I didn't even know we'd done 40 episodes at this point.
Oh, this is episode 49. So our next one is a fun episode. It's I think it's gonna be.
You know what they say. You know what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Time flies when you're having fun.
True. Yeah. So we're on episode 49.
And I don't say this enough, but like, there are probably tens of thousands of podcasts out there, folks. And I thank you for taking an hour plus out of your day to listen to us rant about movies you've probably never seen. And I appreciate everybody who's listening. It doesn't matter which country, creed, religion, gender, you're all welcome here. Thank you for your time.
Sexuality doesn't matter. Gay people we hate. I'm joking. I'm joking. It's
podcast cancelled.
The only thing you didn't mention.
Well, I don't. It doesn't matter to me. That's
I know.
Problem.
I know. It's all good.
Yeah. Where can they find us, Lisa?
Yeah, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram at @itttakes2_pod. Facebook and Tumblr at @itttakes2pod. We're on YouTube at @itttakes2nz. Our Discord server link will be in the description and on our website and etc. Our website is ittakes2.co.nz, so you can go there for further info.
Thank you for joining us. Be safe out there. Don't let the delusionary mirror version of yourself murder you.
Yeah, do try not to do that. Avoid mirrors, especially if the person in them is not you.
Yeah.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.